Let me share my screen. Hi, this is Uday. I have around 6.5 years of consulting experience with. I work with multiple companies like Wipro, Deloitte, and IBM, and I do a corporate and freelance trainings of this kind. And as a freelance consultant. So to start, let's start. This is a brief introduction about me. Let's start with the demo. Okay. So to
Okay, sir.
start with, we start with the five M's of organization management. What are the five M's of organization management? The five M's of organization management are men, material, method, machine, money. So if you see, this men, material, method, machine, money are required for every company to operate. The fundamentals of organization management says. So how that happens is, if you take a small example of a supermarket, ఒక వీచ్ కిరాణా కొట్టు తీసుకుంటే ఆ కిరాణా కొట్టులో మీకు కావాల్సిన సరుకులు తర్వాత ఏవైతే ఉంటాయో అవన్నీ వాళ్ళు కొని పెడతారు. ఏంటి రైస్, లెంటెల్స్, స్పైసెస్ అన్ని అన్ని వాళ్ళు అక్కడ కొని ఉంటాయి. సో వాళ్ళు డీలర్షిప్ దగ్గర నుంచి కొనుక్కొని తెచ్చుకొని కస్టమర్స్కి అమ్ముతారు రీటైల్ గా, రైట్? ఇన్ దట్ బిజినెస్ ఇఫ్ యూ సీ, దే నీడ్ అన్ ఎంప్లాయీ టు వర్క్, దే నీడ్ మెటీరియల్స్, రా హోల్సేల్ మెటీరియల్స్ కొంటారు, దే నీడ్ ద ఇండస్ట్రియల్ మెథడ్స్, దే హ్యావ్ ద ప్యాకింగ్ అండ్ packing materials and weighing setup, and they need money to buy all the raw materials and then make the equipment. అదే ఎగ్జాంపుల్ మనం ఒక టాటా మోటార్స్ తీసుకుంటే, అసెంబ్లీ లైన్ వర్కర్స్ లో మ్యానుఫ్యాక్చరింగ్ లో మెన్ కావాలి. దే విల్ బై ద రా మెటీరియల్స్ లైక్ లాట్ ఆఫ్ రా మెటీరియల్స్, రైట్? And then they will also have industrial engineering methods like industrial engineering methods setup చేస్తుంటారు. తర్వాత ఎక్విప్మెంట్ కావాల్సి ఉంటుంది లైక్ ద అసెంబ్లీ లైన్స్ అండ్ ఆల్, and they'll need money to buy all the raw materials and pay the employees. So if you see, for any company to function in a background, right, before they come into the market, they have their company to run. And for how can they run? All their activities which the companies run will be defined and classified into five M's: men, material, method, machine, money. సో ఈ కాన్సెప్ట్ నేను ఎందుకు చెప్పాను అంటే, ఈ ఫైవ్ ఎమ్స్ ఆఫ్ ఆర్గనైజేషన్ మేనేజ్మెంట్ ఏదైతే ఉందో, దిస్ ఫైవ్ ఎమ్స్ ఆఫ్ ఆర్గనైజేషన్ మేనేజ్మెంట్ is same for a small business like a supermarket, and it's the very same for a big industry like Tata Motors, right? But the scale of business is different. That's where you will have the need of that's where you will see that the business process is same, but the amount of businesses are different, right? So if you take an example of the supermarket కి పద్దులు ఎలా రాస్తారు, లైక్ ఏది బిజినెస్ ఎలా జరిగిందో, ఎంత స్టాక్ కొన్నాం, ఎంత అమ్మాం, ఎంత తీసుకొచ్చాం, ఎంత ఉంది, ఎంత పే చేసాం, రైట్? All these business process transactions you can maintain on a piece of paper. దాన్నే మనం జనరల్ ఎంట్రీ బుక్స్ అంటాం, జనరల్ లెడ్జర్స్ అంటాం, బుక్ ప్రాఫిట్ ఆర్ లాస్ బుక్ కీపింగ్ ఉంటుంది. ఇవన్నీ యూ విల్ హ్యావ్ ఆన్ ఎ పీస్ ఆఫ్ పేపర్ ఫర్ ఎ స్మాల్ సూపర్ మార్కెట్, బట్ యూ కెనాట్ మెయింటైన్ all the business transactions for big companies like Tata on a piece of paper. The reason behind it is, Tata Motors is so huge, or Tata Group is so huge. It's a conglomerate of 125 companies with lakhs of turnover and lakhs of employees and crores of turnovers. You cannot maintain their business transactions on a piece of paper. That's where that's where a need arises of a tool called ERP. For big businesses where they have lakhs of transactions going every year, and hundreds of crores of turnover, they cannot maintain their business on a piece of paper. That's where the ERP tools help the organizations. But what is ERP? ERP is enterprise resource planning. And ERP is abbreviated as enterprise resource planning, where organizations require ERP to streamline operations and maintain the business transactions. సో ఏం జరుగుతుందంటే, ఈఆర్పి టూల్స్ వాడడం వలన ఆర్గనైజేషన్స్కి ఒక వాళ్ళ ఆపరేషన్స్ స్ట్రీమ్లైన్ చేసుకుని, ఒక ఐటీ పద్ధతికి అనుగుణంగా వాళ్ళ ప్రాసెస్ అంతటిని ఒక టూల్లో మెయింటైన్ చేసుకుంటూ, వాళ్ళ ట్రాన్సాక్షన్స్ అన్ని ఆ టూల్లో మెయింటైన్ చేసుకుంటూ బిజినెస్ని నడుపుకోవచ్చు. So what is the benefit of doing it? It's like you will have your business process very much defined and accurate, and you will have the reporting feasibility. Based on the transactions what you will be able to see report like CXOs, all the CXOs suit employees ki రిపోర్టింగ్ కావాలంటే ఈజీగా మనకున్న డేటాని ఈఆర్పి ఇవ్వచ్చు. బిగ్ ఆర్గనైజేషన్స్ కి డేటా మెయింటైన్ చేయడానికి, బిజినెస్ ట్రాన్సాక్షన్స్ పోస్ట్ చేయడానికి వాడే టూల్స్ నే ఈఆర్పి అంటాం. సో అవి పెద్ద ఆర్గనైజేషన్స్ కి కావాలి, బికాస్ చిన్న వాటికి పేపర్ల మీద నార్మల్ బుక్స్ లోనూ అయిపోతాయి కాబట్టి. బట్ ఈఆర్పి అంటే ఏంటో చూసాం. ఈఆర్పిలో ఏముంటాయి? దెర్ ఆర్ లాట్ ఆఫ్ ఈఆర్పి టూల్స్ ఇన్ ద మార్కెట్ లైక్ మైక్రోసాఫ్ట్ డైనమిక్స్, ఇన్ఫోర్, ఒరాకిల్, ఎస్ఏపి అండ్ ఆల్. అండ్ అవుట్ ఆఫ్ ఆల్ దోస్, మైక్రోసాఫ్ట్ డైనమిక్స్, ఇన్ఫోర్, ఒరాకిల్, ఎస్ఏపి అన్నిట్లోకి ఎస్ఏపి is the market leader. The reason behind why SAP is considered as a market leader is because of the integration SAP offers. Right? Because of the integration SAP offers. And when we say integration, what will SAP do? Right? So ఇప్పుడు మీకు ఒక ప్రొడక్షన్ అసెంబ్లీ లైన్ ఉందనుకోండి. అసెంబ్లీ లైన్లో ప్రొక్యూర్మెంట్ స్టాక్ కావాలి మనకి, ఏదో మ్యానుఫ్యాక్చరింగ్కి, టాటా మోటార్స్ సినారియోలోనే. అప్పుడు ఏం చేస్తాం? ఆ అసెంబ్లీ లైన్ సినారియోలోనే మనకు స్టాక్ కావాల్సినప్పుడు దే విల్ క్రియేట్ ఏ ప్రొడక్షన్ ఆర్డర్ which will be converted into a purchase order by the procurement team, and the procurement team will buy from the stock from the vendor, and the procurement team will keep the stock in the warehouse, and the warehouse team will issue the stock to the production team, and for the product stock brought by the product procurement team, invoice will be received from the vendor and the payment would be done by the finance team. సో ఇప్పుడు మనం చూస్తే ఎవరికి స్టాక్ కావాలి, ఎక్కడి నుంచి తేవాలి, ఎందుకు ఉంచాలి, ఉంచిన తర్వాత ఎవరు వాడుకుంటారు, దాన్ని ఎక్కడి నుంచి కొన్నాం, ఎవరికి పే చేయాలి, ఇదంతా ఇంటిగ్రేటెడ్గా ఉంది. సో ఒక సినారియోలో చూస్తేనే మనం ఇంత పెద్ద ప్రాసెస్ ఉందంటే, ఇలా అన్ని మల్టిపుల్ సినారియోస్, మల్టిపుల్ ప్రాసెస్లో ఎవ్రీథింగ్ షుడ్ బి ఇంటిగ్రేటెడ్ టుగెదర్. That's where this ERP SAP tool will help. SAP will offer that all-round integration. Every document is tied to each other. That's where SAP is considered as the market leader. Okay. And to have a brief introduction about SAP, SAP is abbreviated as Systems, Applications and Products in Data Processing. Systems, Applications and Products in Data Processing. And SAP was invented in 1972 by 5 ex-IBM employees in Germany. So from 49 years, it has been going a long journey through, and it's evaluating and evaluating itself as a ERP tool. So this is the brief introduction about how businesses run and why big businesses like need an ERP tool of this kind, and what will ERP tools do. Out of the ERP tools, what SAP will do, and what is SAP abbreviated as. We never call a SAP in SAP world, because SAP in German means pig. So we call every time it as SAP. Any questions so far?
No, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay. Now comes what is there inside SAP. So SAP is all module centric. SAP is all module centric, where every business process is mapped into a module in SAP. So what happens is, all the functional module, which is very broadly classified as functional and technical modules. So if you see all the functional modules, it would be no coding. There would be not even a single bit of code you will write, but what will you do as a consultant, right? So there are a lot of business areas SAP talks about, which we will see individually now. So SAP MM is called SAP Materials Management, which handles with the logistics, procurement, supply chain, and inventory part of a company. SAP MM deals with logistics, procurement, supply chain, and inventory part of a company. And SAP FICO deals with finance and controlling. SAP SD deals with sales and distribution. SAP PP deals with production planning. SAP CRM deals with customer relationship management. SAP HCM deals with human capital management. SAP WM deals with warehouse management. QM deals with quality management. PM deals with plant maintenance. So if you see, all these modules deal with each individual business process. So each individual consultant of a module will sit in the client, and they will offer solutions to the client business process. So if it's a development project in SAP, help the clients. How do you implement this particular process in SAP? They come up with an example of a process and you tell them how to do. But if it's a support project, what will happen is, you as a consultant will solve the issues they'll get in daily day-to-day operations of their business. That would be your roles as an SAP consultant. And we prefer a lot of people to join in either in mostly in SAP MM because it being the easiest, and people from different backgrounds can take it up easily, like mostly the mechanical and the civil or the core engineers what we have, right? They would be the right fit because of the logistics and procurement supply chain process that would be involved in. And I myself is a mechanical engineer, to state that as an example. And it doesn't mean that nobody else is qualified, everyone is qualified, because we have a lot of opportunities in SAP MM and it's very easier than other modules to pitch in. That's why SAP MM is the preferred approach to whoever wants to switch into IT. Okay, so these are all the functional modules, and if you see everything after hyphen, these are the latest modules in SAP, which after, but you can learn only after you have the basics of these modules. If you know this, and market doesn't expect you to be an expert in all the modules. Only one module anytime. Only one module if you know, market is good for you, and you are good for the market. So not more until you have 10, 15 years of SAP experience. Till then, nobody asks you to do multiple modules. So SAP MM is the very easiest and the best way because a lot of opportunities also exist. That's why we prefer people to join in SAP MM. Okay. And how much ever I say this is a business software where each business process is mapped into a two module, and all these modules would be worked upon by consultants. At the end, it's a software, an IT tool, which requires a bit of coding, right? So all these there would be technical modules which will do the background work, like SAP basis will do the system setup, patch upgrades, access revision, provisioning, revoke and all. But whereas ABAP, what they do is ABAP does anywhere there is a custom code requirement to write, SAP ABAP will do the custom code requirements. So these are all the module specific how SAP operates, and we are going to see more deep about SAP MM today. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Now comes both ECC and S4 HANA. So there, when you talk about SAP world, you might have heard about ECC and S4 HANA, but what are those? We'll see on a very high level. ECC stands for ERP core component, and S4 HANA means SAP for HANA. ECC means for ERP core component, and S4 HANA means SAP for HANA. ECC is an existing software from 2000, but S4 HANA is the latest version of SAP, which SAP is offering from 2015. So the primary differences are SAP ECC runs on Oracle database, whereas S4 HANA runs on HANA database. HANA is an in-house database built by SAP. HANA is an in-house database built by SAP, where SAP running on HANA is called S4 HANA. And then the primary difference is the database being used. SAP ECC uses Oracle, but as S4 HANA uses HANA database. And cloud supportability, SAP supports no cloud support with SAP ECC, but be it on-premise or on-cloud versions of S4 HANA, SAP supports all the cloud activities. That is, SAP supports that you can run on SAP on any cloud infrastructure. That is, like you can run SAP on Microsoft Azure, you can run SAP on Amazon Web Services, you can run SAP on Google Cloud Platform, you can run SAP on IBM Cloud, whatever the cloud computing platform you want, you can run through. So there are advantages of be using S4 HANA, but now the question is, what should you learn, ECC or S4 HANA? We recommend everyone to learn as ECC because ECC is the fundamental and fully developed soft version of SAP, which everyone can learn, and you will have opportunities on this. And S4 HANA is something you can learn after you learn ECC. So in order to learn S4 HANA, we would say SAP ECC MM processes is a prerequisite. And because SAP says from 2027, 6 years from now, there would be all the clients should be converting into ECC once into S4 HANA. So that's why everyone who has today will be taught on ECC because its primary and up maintenance and everything is being done in SAP ECC today. And 80% of the customers lies in ECC in the market. Only 20% lies in S4 HANA. So that's where we support everyone to learn SAP ECC. And on top of it, you learn to learn S4 HANA, we can teach you as well. No worries. I have 5 SAP S4 HANA implementations experience right from 2017. So I can teach you, but the prerequisite is we want everyone to learn SAP ECC and S4 HANA. Even if you register for S4 HANA, we teach the same way. We teach SAP ECC and then S4 HANA because that's the proper channel how you learn so that it helps and benefits your career. And now comes the primary question, what about these modules? All these modules, what you're seeing, will run on both the systems, but SAP ECC MM is like a prerequisite you can learn, and whatever the variances that are there in S4HANA, we can teach you so that it helps you for your job interviews or cracking interviews or whatever it is, right? So that's where we suggest to go for SAP ECC fully, learn it, crack it, and then if you want as for you can learn it, which I can teach you as well. Any questions so far on the last four slides what we spoke about?
No, sir.
Okay, all good. Thank you. So now we go into deep into the MM concepts called procurement cycle. So what is the procurement cycle? Requirement determination. It starts with requirement determination where you have to decide what you want. Do you want a material or a service or an asset? So if you want a material, you will you will buy raw materials for your production, or you will buy services for your gardening work in your plant, or you will buy services for your for the uh, equipment maintenance you have, right? And then you can buy assets for your company to build what we say to build office space for your company. So either materials or services or assets, what do you want? We have to decide. And out of them, if we decide, the next thing is requirement determination is what you want to buy. Just give me a second. I'll be on mute. Just give me a second. Okay, sorry, I'm back. So what I was saying is requirement determination about, do you want a material or a service or an asset? So now you decided you want a material, right? You want your raw materials for your production. So once you got to know what to buy, then the next question is whom to buy from. ఎక్కడి నుంచి కొనాలి, right? So once you got to know what to buy from, then where to buy from is the question. Where to buy from is source determination. So you know a vendor whom you buy from, or you have a contract with any vendor you will buy from, or you don't know any vendor, so you'll go for a bidding, request for quotation process we call in SAP. So once you go for a quotation, whoever offers the least quote, he says, some vendor says, okay, I give for 10, some vendor gives for no 12 rupees, some vendor says 13 rupees. So if you decided, okay, the guy with 10 rupees is good, so you order from him the stock, right? That's called sourcing process. So once you got to know what to buy and whom to buy from, you will order the stock. That's what we call a PO. PO is purchase order. A purchase order is a formal document sent to a vendor requesting goods delivery. Boss, నాకు ఇంత సామాన్ కావాలి, so and so date, so and so month, so and so date, so and so cost, so and so material, and so and so quantity. Please deliver at my so and so plant location. This is what we write in a PO. And once the PO is sent to the vendor for requesting delivery of goods, the vendor will supply the goods to your warehouse. And once he supplies the goods to your warehouse, you will do a goods receipt in SAP. The reason behind it is physically you're receiving the stock, but SAP should know how much stock you're receiving, and the SAP should also have a keep note of the stock, right? That's why we do a goods receipt, and it will increase the inventory in the system. And along with the goods, the vendor also sends the invoice, and he says, this much boss, you have brought this much amount of quantity and all, you pay me this much quantity. So you accept the invoice. Once you accept the invoice for the PO, the payment would be processed by the finance team. So the real process is POGRIR, we call purchase order, goods receipt, invoice receipt. POGRIR. Any changes in the PO, if at all the vendor asks for price or date or quantity, you will do according to the in the PO monitoring state. So POGRIR, purchase order, goods receipt, invoice receipt. This is a standard procurement cycle everywhere in the world, everywhere. So what happens when we see a POGRIR is the procurement cycle runs in the same way. So let's suppose if you take an example of you wanted to eat some dinner tonight, right? You should decide you want to go to North Indian or South Indian. So you decided South Indian. So you wanted to have a meal, South Indian meal. So you will select a vendor. which vendor you want to eat from, like which restaurant you want to eat from. After you selected, you go and sit, you order the stock, that is purchase order, you order the food, and you receive the goods, that is your food. You receive it, and the waiter gives the bill, that is invoice, and your father pays for it. Right, this is the same procurement cycle, be it smart, be it your house, or be it in a hotel, or be it in a large company. Everywhere the procurement cycle is same, but the amount of business, the huge processes you have, right, that gets different, which we will see in the next slide. Because the procurement process is very simple and same, but the types of procurement what you have are very dynamic and different, where the real world solutions has to be arise from this concepts. So if you see procurement processes, we broadly classify them as direct and indirect. Direct materials are direct procurement and indirect procurement. What is direct procurement? Procurement of direct materials is called direct procurement, whereas procurement of indirect materials is called indirect procurement. But what is a direct material? Any material which is used and consumed in production is called direct material. Whereas any metal which is used and not consumed in production is called indirect material. Example, if you take a materials like in case of Tata Motors, right? Engine parts, clutch, brake, nut, bolt, all of these are called direct materials. Where once you consume them in one car, you have to buy for one more, right? But whereas indirect, what is indirect? Once if you don't consume them, right, if you do, if even if you consume it, there is no need. Like what happens is the helmets and gloves worn by the employees, right, the assembly line workers, and the tools like wrenches they use, right. So those are like you don't consume them. It's like any number of cars you manufacture, the same wrench you can use until it's torn and worn. So those kind of two are process are called indirect. So direct and indirect procurement are broad ways where different procurement processes run, which we will see on a very high level. Okay. And why I'm teaching this or this in this demo class also, I'll explain. So if you see procurement process, that is standard. Standard procurement is you order the goods, you create a PO, you order the goods, you get the goods, and you do an invoice. That's it. It's standard procurement. PO, GR, IR. Whereas subcontracting, what is subcontracting? Subcontracting is a process where you will issue the raw materials to manufacture the finished materials, which you will buy from the vendor. So example, if you are manufacturing chips, right? You are manufacturing chips, but you don't have a packing facility. So you give the chips and cover to the vendor, and the vendor will do the packing and give back to you the stock. He'll give back the stock because it's your stock. You are giving him only for packing or manufacturing process only, and you pay him for the same. That's called a subcontracting process. And consignment. Consignment is a scenario where the vendor stock would be lying in our company premises, and the company will pay to the vendor only when we consume it. Example, DMart. So DMart will have the stock of the vendor. Like I as a vendor will give the stock to DMart, and DMart will pay me only when they consume. When will they consume? Any customers will buy from them. So let's suppose you go and buy 10 kilos, and Subbu will go for 10 kilos, and other one will go for 10 kilos of rice. So whoever goes for and creates, right, and uses. So for those people, for those scenarios, they'll have, like, let's suppose three people brought 30 kilos, and for those each 10 kilo, we'll have the invoice raised and payment done. So whenever the company uses a stock of the vendor, then only we will pay. Till then, we will not pay. That's called a consignment scenario. Understood these processes? Any questions in them?
Sir, can you please explain the difference between direct and indirect once again? Small.
Sure. So direct and indirect is any materials which are used in consumed in production are called direct materials. Example, engine parts, clutch, nut, brake, bolt, etc. All these things are like once you use them in a car manufacturing, they are gone. You have to have a new engine spare part and all for a new car, right? So those kind of materials which are used and consumed in production are called direct materials, and production procurement of direct materials is called direct procurement. Whereas indirect procurement is any indirect material which will be used but not consumed in production are called indirect materials. Example, the gloves and helmets worn by the assembly line workers, tools like wrenches, the what they use in manufacturing of cars. So how many cars they manufacture, but the same wrench, right, until it's torn and worn. So those kind of materials which are helped in production but not directly used or consumed for production are called indirect materials. Understood?
Okay, sir.
Yeah. So I'll ask you a question. Can you answer for me? Do you do you think Tata Motors and Tata Steels is one company or two different companies?
But management is same, but both are different, sir.
Right? Correct. So they are what we call as two different company codes in SAP world. They belong to same Tata group, but they do the individual business, right? So, but stock transfer orders are something relevant to it. STO is stock transport order, where stock transfer between two plants of same company code happens. It's called intra-company. Whereas stock transfer between two plants happens, it's called inter-company. So, what is intra-company? If Tata Steels is giving stock, Tata Steels Chennai is giving stock to Tata Steels Hyderabad, it's called an intra-company stock transfer, where Tata Steels Chennai, Tata Steels Hyderabad. Only the stock is moving between two plants of same company code. So there is no amount involved in it, just like operational feasibility, they are moving it. Right. But if you see intercompany, where stock is transferring between Tata Steels to Tata Motors, if Tata Steels Chennai is giving to Tata Motors Chennai, then it's called intercompany stock transfer, where Tata Steels is selling the goods to Tata Motors and Tata Motors is buying and paying it to the Tata Steels. That is called intercompany stock transfer. Why do we companies do stock transfer intercompany? Is intracompany is for operational frequencies, operational feasibilities. But intercompany is rather than buying from an outside vendor, if you buy from the vendor like whom do you know, right, then this it would be at a much lesser cost. That's why intercompany stock transfers is also done. Okay. Next we go to third party and individual purchase. So let's take an example. Do you know Amazon uh, also offers you to buy materials like Mama Earth products? These days it is allowing, right? So if you want to order a Mama Earth baby oil from Amazon, and if you once you order as a customer, you order the stock to the Amazon, because they are selling it to you. It's a sales order to you, sales order to them, right? When you order, so with respect to a sale order, if a procurement starts and the vendor gives the stock to the customer directly, like in this scenario, you order the stock to Amazon and Amazon does will not have the stock at all, and Amazon will get the stock from the other vendor, and the will raise an order to the vendor, and that vendor gives the stock directly to you. The vendor will not give the stock to Amazon. The vendor will directly give to you. That's called third party procurement, where you will pay to Amazon only and Amazon will pay to the vendor how much it is. Whereas if let's suppose you ordered to Amazon and Amazon ordered to Mama Earth and Mama Earth gives Amazon and Amazon gives to you. That's called individual purchase. But in both the scenarios, whenever a customer orders the stock, then only the procurement will start. Since till the time the customers order, we don't maintain the stock and we will not have it. So some customer asks for it, then we raise the purchase orders to the vendors. And if a vendor gives the stock to the customer directly, it's called third party. But whereas if a vendor gives the stock to us and we give the stock to customer, is called an individual PO. Any questions?
No, sir. Okay, everything is.
So all these scenarios are all about material procurement. If you see materials in what units of measure you buy usually is kg, each, piece, gallon, liter, carton, box, right? But whereas those are very much different from service procurement. The reason is service procurement is all about how do you measure services. You measure services in time and also in activities. If you want a wall to be painted, it will take 2 days or 2 hours, but not 2 kilos, right? And if you have any service maintenance to be done, the service maintenance would be there like one activity or one visit. That's why the units of measure you measure and the amount that you charge for is different. That's why Service procurement is differently handled in SAP, since you procure services for your companies as well. And then outline agreement is a concept which is combination of contract and scheduling agreement, where contract is an contract is a what we say, not a 100% commitment, but you make a contract with a vendor, and so that it at that with that price, anytime in that validity period you want to buy, you can buy from the vendors. But whereas if you don't want, you need not, it's not a requirement, hard and fast rule. But scheduling agreements are like it's like 100% commitment you give to a vendor for procurement. Example scenario of scheduling agreement is, you want milk every day in home, right? So you want milk every day in home, so tell the milkman that, okay, I want one milk packet every day, give it at my home, I'll pay you every weekly or monthly or fortnightly, whatever it is. Companies also require materials in frequent intervals, like you need milk in every day. So for those requirements, they create scheduling agreements. Let's suppose a company want one kind of material every month. So instead of 12 standard POs and 12 GRs and 12 IRs, the company creates one scheduling agreement with 12 deliveries maintained, and accordingly, as per the goods received, the payment would be done. So this is called a scheduling agreement. So these are all the different types of direct procurements. And one famous indirect procurement process we can talk about is any IT based purchases where the validity would come. Like if we want to buy a McAfee antivirus or any of these kind of validity based purchases, right, has to be maintained. Then framework orders are created in SAP. So these are all the different procurement processes. And why did I explain them? Why are we talking about it now? I'll go through, but before that, any questions?
Oh, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay. Now the question is, why did we see them? Okay, just give me a second. So now the question is, why did we see them? Because all these processes, if you know each business we have to process, we have to know, and how to do them in SAP, we need to know. So if you see a standard procurement process example, creating a purchase order, goods receipt, invoice receipt. This is a standard procurement process. So how do you do them is the question, right? So creating a purchase order is a business transaction. Getting the goods is a business transaction. Getting the invoice is a business transaction. So how do you create purchase orders is, each business transaction will have a code associated in SAP called T code. So ME20, anywhere in the world you go, ME21 is the T code to create purchase order in SAP. MIGO to goods receipt in SAP, MIRO invoice in SAP. So if you see, we take a standard SAP example and see how this runs. ME21N, if you give, it's create purchase order. So you will give a vendor. So this vendor in which purchasing organization, which P group is buying, which company code it operates in, right? And what is the material you will buy, how much quantity you will buy, when is the delivery date, what is the price, which plant you want to stock in. So with this information, you will order the stock. You see the vendor is there, material is there, this material at what price, what quantity, what date. So how do you want, you create a purchase order. So let's suppose I want this material in the from this supplier, and this purchase or company code is comes in, and that is price, this quantity, the delivery location is my plant. So if you go to the delivery address, you will have the you'll have the delivery address of the plant coming in. So you're ordering the stock. So once you save, the purchase order is created and the purchase order is sent out to the vendor. Then the vendor gives the stock. So you will go to MIGO It's for goods receipt. So you see, for the goods receipt for purchase order, you'll give the PO number and do the goods receipt, where you will say, in my 1710 stock, storage location 171A, I want the stock. Item is okay to proceed for the goods receipt, and you will post. It's asking give a delivery note. I'll give the delivery note that delivery on 22 21 11 2021. That's okay, and you post a good receipt. Okay, that's some finance error, no worries. And then for this PO, you will do a GR, you will do an invoice also. So this process, if you see particularly, you have a material, vendor, everything given. If you want to buy a material, I know a material, I have given it in the PO. But if you wanted to buy a material, what material you will buy? Is it a raw material, finished material, semi-finished, packing, trading, non-stock, packaging? What type of a material? If you want to buy from a vendor, what vendor you want to buy? It is like a is it like a purchasing or a payments or a domestic or foreign vendor? And if you want to buy prerequisites, like what kind of delivery dates and price you wanted to maintain, you get in PIR. So each T code wise, each process wise, how do you do? Because in a movement type, if you see, every process will have a movement type coming in. Like every goods movement will be captured with a unique movement type in SAP. The reason behind it is financial liability should be tracked in SAP, which they will be done usually with a movement type. Because if you see in a standard procurement process, 101 comes, but in a subcontracting process, 541 and 101 comes, and the item categories, the prerequisites would get different. So each process wise, how the categories get different, what the process would be different, those things we will see. Because if you go right, there would be one Excel of this kind prepared for each batch. For each batch, if you see, we will prepare an Excel of this kind, and this Excel would be the course content. So this course content we will follow, and we will touch base with all the topics in this Excel. Like if you see, it would be very practical oriented, where each concept wise basics, then how to configure system, then how do you practice with your own data, then each business processes what we spoke. If you see, subcontracting, consignment, MRP, then contracts and scheduling agreements, then STO, pricing, like how prices should come, how the subjected approval should go, how service procurement should happen. All these processes we will cover in a day-to-day class, which I will be maintaining the track of. Like I'll be held responsible for maintaining all the topic. I'll delivering all these topics. I maintain a track on each day. When did I cover what? Right, all these concepts. And at the end, I'll also cover an interview preparation S4 HANA optional demo we give usually, to show how S4 HANA looks like. And even interview preparation also we will give, so that it helps you, whatever you have learnt, all of them, right? It would be beneficial for you to it would be beneficial for you, where you can showcase, you will understand how questions come in a real time situation, right? But from a delivery perspective, if you see, each topic, whatever you have, would be a theory practical based approach. So if you see, every concept will have a theory practical approach, where if you, let's take STO, right? What's the concept? How in different ways we can do, and what are the steps to do, and then what are the prerequisite configurations you need to do in SAP. And then once you do what steps and all, everything is done, what are the interview questions? If it's a very important concept from an interview perspective, we cover in the same concept what are the interview questions. And at the end, we'll also cover the interview question session, so that it helps you to understand, one, important question concepts are dealt, what the questions that might come up, and overall also what it comes. So this kind of theory practical approach would be covered, where for each real time examples from industry we take. So if you ask me, if a purchase order is raised and it has to go for approval, it goes on approval from a value basis usually. So what my clients asked me in my consulting career, how did I configure, or I gave solution on those lines. I explain the standard concept. Also, I explain you the different value ranges and everything, so that for each concept I'll explain to the practical application, how can you do that, how the requirement comes, right? So these things, everything, every concept that is there in this Excel have an, what we say, have the documents written. So each document wise theory practical approach we follow, so that you'll understand the theory, then you understand the practice, right? And every class you listen here, every class you listen, you will get a video download of it. You will have, I'll give you the videos download to you. All the videos will be given to you, so that anytime, any number of times you can listen them. So once you listen this in the class, each concept, after that you will have the download with you, any number of times you can listen. And out of my own interest, right, out of my own interest, I give this, guys. I'll give you the assignment tracker, where I don't track this, but I'll give you the tracker where you can each concept wise, how can you practice, I'll give you step by step. So what happens is, you listen it once, you want to have a doubt, you listen it again, and you can, when you practice in the system, SAP access is given to you like this, where you can practice step by step. How can you easily practice, I'll give it. So what happens is, it helps you to practice very easily. Okay, first step this one, next step this one, each class wise, if you see, each class wise all the concepts I have. So I'll keep giving these documents regularly, this assignment tracker, so that easily you can practice and you can go ahead. It helps you to practice what step after what step you need to do, so that this process you can complete the one which I have done in the class. So this is the approach, where assignment trackers, which helps you to practice very well, theory practical based approach, and video downloads of all classes would be given. And at the end, I'll give some documents as well. So if you see something of this kind, documents to students, this documents I'll give, where there would be cheat sheets, T codes, processes, everything written, and 70 interview questions maintained as well, and all the T code with the explanations, all the processes where easily you can understand, everything would be given to you, so that you can easily understand and practice and go for the interviews very confidently. And if at all, if it's an S4 HANA class, we will also cover these concepts fully in S4 HANA. But if it's not an S4 HANA class, we will give you the basics of S4 HANA, so that you can present yourself that you know S4 HANA. So whatever is required from an interview perspective, we cover here. But if you take S4 HANA as well, after you learn ECC, once you're proficient in ECC, then we cover the 30% variation in S4 HANA, so that it helps you. So this would be the overall course content. This is the course content. Structure of classes would be told like this. If you take a weekday class or a weekend class, it's fine. Based on the weekend, weekday, we are open. We can discuss, and based on the feasibility, we will take classes. But yeah, this Excel, this tracker, and then whatever these particular documents I've shown, I'll give it to you at the end, whenever wherever it is required. And we make you the interview ready also, with which you can go as a fresher, or you can fake your resume with 2 3 years of experience, and you can use that experience to whatever you learned here, and you can go for the interview. This would be the overall demo from my end.